Good afternoon. Will this section of the Committee of Supply please come to order? The next set of estimates to be considered by this section of the Committee of Supply is for the Department of Sport, Culture, and Heritage. Does the Honourable Minister have an opening statement? The Honourable Minister. No, we cannot hear you. We can see you, we just cannot hear you. For sure. Just signal when you're ready. Minister, go ahead. Yeah, no, we still cannot hear you. Can the minister hear us? Just wondering if the Minister for Sport, Culture and Heritage has a headset that might work. So to the committee, because we are having issues, could we take a recess until we get this figured out, and then we can call back to order? Okay, thank you. So the committee will now stand in recess.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Success. Thank you.
Great.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, so good afternoon once again, folks, and we will again call the Committee of Supply to order. As I mentioned previously, we will be considering in this area of Committee of Supply, Sport, Culture, and Heritage. Does the Honourable Minister have an opening statement?
Yes, I do. Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I'd also like to...
Minister of Sport, Culture, and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd also like to welcome the members from, I believe it is Burroughs, Notre Dame, and Tyndall Park that are here today, as well as I believe the member from Radisson. So I am pleased to be here, Mr. Chair. I'd like to welcome all of my colleagues, as I said, and it really is an honor and a privilege as the Minister of Sport, Culture and Heritage to introduce the 2021-2022 budgetary estimates for my department. I'd like to take a moment to introduce members from my department who are here with me today. Jeff Natchuk, the Deputy Minister of Sport, Culture and Heritage. Mike Sosiak, the Assistant Deputy Minister and Executive Financial Officer for Administration and Finance. Veronica Dick, the Assistant Deputy Minister of Sport, Culture and Heritage. Scott Goodine, the Archivist of Manitoba. And Jamie Carnegie, the Executive Director of Status of Women. So from the bottom of my heart, I would like to thank all of the dedicated women who provided care and compassion to all of the women in women's shelters who seek assistance from these really important women. I'd also like to say miigwech to all of the grassroots organizations that provide vital resources to our most vulnerable Manitobans. I'd also like to provide my profound gratitude to all of the frontline workers, our medical professionals, our healthcare aides, our teachers and assistants, our paramedics, our first responders, and all of those working with our most vulnerable population in the social services field, and our entire civil service here in Manitoba, who during this very unprecedented and challenging times have made a real difference for all Manitobans. And today it's really a pleasure to be able to share some of our department's achievements and initiatives that we have established that are making a real difference again in the lives of Manitobans. First of all, on December 4th, we released Manitoba's framework to address gender-based violence here in our province. And this document outlines how our government is organizing itself to coordinate efforts to end gender-based violence, including support for addressing the calls for justice from the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. And in March 2021, I was very excited, together with my colleagues from Justice and Indigenous and Northern Relations, to announce $6.4 million in grants to community organizations from the Victims Assistance Fund. And that supports, again, many of the programs and priorities that are laid out in our framework. And as you know, the pandemic has had far-reaching economic impacts across many sectors. We also know that women have experienced the negative economic impacts of the pandemic most significantly, at a much higher rate than men. And increasing participation in the workforce for women is a key element of economic recovery from the pandemic. Our Manitoba Status of Women has supported initiatives to encourage women to train and acquire good paying jobs in non-traditional sectors and roles such as heavy construction, information, and communication technology. Manitoba Status of Women is also working with the Manitoba Construction Sector Council on a very new and exciting initiative that will provide community-based training and mentorship programs for Indigenous women up in the north. Skilled trades, such as in the areas of framer and blast drillers, have begun working already, these women, in Fairfield and Cross Lake, respectively. And water and waste water system installers have already started in the Dakota TP area, and also as blast drillers in the War Lake York Landing, just coming up this winter. I am pleased to report that the first group of 16 women in Cross Lake have all completed the course and are now working on construction projects in their home community. Yes, they are actually building their own communities. I am so proud of all of them. So the Family Violence Prevention Program supports the operation as well of 10 women's crisis shelters across our province. And our program staff have worked very closely with public health officials and shelter leadership to ensure that shelters remained open. And not only open, but they continue to provide those very essential services 24/7. Even in the face of COVID, those women were there, those angels were there working with the women. The pandemic created unprecedented challenges for all Manitobans, but especially for those who are experiencing domestic violence or family violence. And in areas around the world, domestic violence has been noted as a shadow pandemic playing out alongside COVID-19. And I want to ensure you that all Manitobans in our province have been supported, and they know where to turn if they need support. I don't know how much time I have left, Mr. Chair, but I'm very proud of the important work that we have done in this department to lift women up, to provide them with support, even during this very challenging time. Not only have we provided them these services, but we've also partnered with End Homelessness Winnipeg to provide a new homeless individuals and families information system, or it's called HIFIS, something that shelters have been asking for years and years and years. And this is an integrated data management system that will enable accurate information on shelter capacity and availability. It's the same shelter system, information system that Asylum Mission and Main Street Project would use. So it really is an opportunity for all of those different shelters to work together for the betterment of women and homeless individuals in the province of Manitoba. And this past spring, I was also very proud that we've just opened up an RFP to acquire an updated crisis line for the family violence centers here in Manitoba. And this new web-based platform will not only enable calls, but secure chat functions. And we know that's so important because otherwise, a perpetrator may have the ability to listen in on a phone call. But by using the chat function, it's a much safer way of reaching out for help for those individuals that are experiencing violence. Our archives, we're working together with archives. We're actually right now scoping for $372,000 to acquire a new system and a design phase so that individuals across the province and really across the globe can access very important information with regard to archives. So that's something that I'm also very proud of. Here in Manitoba, of course, it's been a challenging year, but Sport Manitoba has continued to be able to provide programs to our athletes, especially our young Indigenous athletes. And I'm very proud that we provided over $400,000 from our province alone for programming for Indigenous individuals and athletes. I'm just going through this a little faster because I know that there's so much to talk about, so much to share with all of my colleagues around the table. And I want to make sure that all of you are aware of the very important work that's taking place in this department here. Of course, we have the International Curling Center of Excellence, which is making good progress right now. Our province funds $3.6 million for the Manitoba Film and Music, which develops and promotes the film industry here in Manitoba. And of course, before COVID, the film industry was just booming here. Our government recognized the importance of the film industry. Of course, it was a conservative government under Gary Filmon who first initiated the film and video tax credit. And so we're going to make sure that we've made that tax credit even better. We eliminated the sunset clause, making it permanent, which was just such a success for film producers to be able to reach out now and tell all of those individuals, whether they're from MGM or Universal or our local film producers, that they can come here with confidence and produce films without having to worry that at some point in time that film and video tax credit might be, well, to make it very clear, might be axed. So that's not going to happen. We made it permanent. And once again, we know that our film and video people, our film producers are going to be just running here to Manitoba, knowing in fact that we have the very best tax credit across the country. Of course, we just made our book publishing tax credit permanent. And that's really important as well. I've talked to many book publishers across our province, and they've said they need that certainty. And so this provides them that certainty. So I'm very proud of that. With regard to libraries, I'm going to say, stay tuned. We're going to have some very good news for libraries in the very near future. And of course, with regard to our Heritage Grants program, there has been no other government that has invested more in our heritage projects than our government here in Manitoba. And just on Friday, as a matter of fact, I was at a Selkirk Legion, and we announced some additional money for a monument so that they could establish a monument to recognize the Dufferin boys.
The minister's time has expired. And just before we move on, I thank the minister for those comments. Just because we have people joining us virtually, I just want to make sure that you can all see the timer that it should be showing up on the display. So I see that we are, so thank you for that. Does the critic of the official opposition have an opening statement? No official statement there, thank you. So under Manitoba practice, debate on the minister's salary is the last item considered for the Department of the Committee of Supply. Accordingly, we shall now defer consideration of line item 14.1A contained in resolution 14.1. Does the committee wish to proceed through the estimates of this department chronologically or in a global discussion? Global discussion, all agreed. Therefore, thank you, and it is agreed that questioning for this department will proceed in a global manner with all resolutions to be passed once questioning has concluded. The floor is now open for question. The member for Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for the opening statement. I would like to ask, the estimate books show a planned reduction to culture and sport programs of $2.6 million. Can the minister kindly explain why the large reduction is planned here?
The Minister of Sport, Culture and Heritage.
Thank you to my honorable colleague. We cannot identify the area that you're referring to. So I would just appreciate if you could perhaps give us maybe more information on where you identified that decrease, because, here in our department, we have not decreased any funding at all. I mean, the funding has remained stable throughout the entire year. So if you could provide me more information, it might have been an area where we actually transferred nearly that amount of money from sport, culture, and heritage from our festivals into the Manitoba Arts Council. So that's why it may look like a decrease, but it's really just a relocation from one area of our department into another. So can you provide me with those details, please?
The member from Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I will do. Yes, just a quick reminder, sorry. Just a quick reminder too, that all questions and answers, please pose them through the chair. So the member from Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I ask the minister if she can confirm that there is no reduction in the budget for the Department of Sport, Culture and Heritage in the current budget as compared to the previous year?
The Minister of Sport, Culture, and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm thinking that the area that you might be looking at is expenditure summary. So I can tell you with certainty that there has been.
Excuse me, Minister. Again, I really need to emphasize that we not use the word you, or because then it directs it to an individual person. It must go through the chair, please, and a third party. So the Minister of Sport, Culture, and Heritage.
So, Mr. Chair, I can tell Mr. Chair that with certainty that there has been no decrease at all in funding to any of the sport, culture, heritage, status of women areas within the Department of Sport, Culture, Heritage, and Status of Women. You might see a reduction to the Manitoba Centennial Concert Hall, which is a reduction in the amount of money that they spent. But that does not impact at all the amount of money that we have provided to all of our sport, culture, and heritage areas, our OREs, any of our Manitoba Film and Music. There has been no decrease, just a decrease in the amount of money that they actually spent because they had a significant decrease in income and revenue that they had because of COVID. I hope that's sufficient, Mr. Chair.
Member for Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can the minister kindly expand on the situation at Centennial Center? Did they spend less this time? What were the reasons?
Minister of Sport, Culture, and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I wanted to confirm that, in fact, the MCCC, or the Manitoba Centennial Concert Hall, because of COVID, I'm sure that all of the members are aware that all of the arts organizations, the arts sector, the culture sector, were most impacted. And they were the ones that I'm sure that you've read this many times, who were the first to have to close their doors as a result of COVID. And that certainly happened to the Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre. It certainly happened to the Centennial Concert Hall. It certainly happened to the Manitoba Opera. It happened to the Manitoba, who else is there? I'm sorry, the Royal Winnipeg Ballet. To all of those organizations, because of COVID, they had to close their doors. So as a result, their expenditures were less and their revenue was less. We did hear from the Centennial Concert Hall, from the CEO, and they raised the concerns that they didn't have the revenue, the normal revenue that they normally had because of the performances that they host. So we provided them with an additional nearly $1 million. It was $900,000 that we provided to them in the 2020-2021 year to ensure that they remained sustainable. And I could provide you with a letter that would, in fact, reinforce how important that was to them to be able to have that funding, that $900,000, nearly $1 million, to go towards reducing any deficit that they thought they were going to experience. So, I worked with Mr. Olson numerous times. Our department worked with him to ensure that they had the resources that were necessary. And, just this week, the Royal Winnipeg Ballet is hosting their first ballet again in the Centennial Concert Hall. And I know that everybody is thrilled. All of our people in the arts sector are thrilled that we can once again get back to some form of normalcy. Of course, it's not the same as it was before. The numbers are still reduced and people are wearing masks, but that ability, we know that arts and culture enriches the lives of all Manitobans. So just being able to do that is providing people with some semblance, again, of normalcy. So I hope that answers the member's question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member for Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the details. I would thank the minister for the details, actually, and it actually confused me. Can I request for clarity? As the minister said that the Centennial Hall, they underspent. At the same time, minister has provided 900,000 more to them to sustain. So how does that work? They underspent. How much did they underspend? Can I know that and details about the situation?
The Minister of Sport, Culture and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, again, just referring to what I had said earlier. So Manitoba Centennial Concert Hall was not eligible for any federal funding, for no CEWS funding or anything like that. So, we recognize following discussion with the CEO that it was necessary to provide them with additional funding to ensure that they remain sustainable as we emerge through this COVID-19 pandemic. And, I've had many federal, provincial, territorial meetings with other provinces, other jurisdictions, and every one of, the arts sector areas have felt this same decrease in revenue. So when you take a look at Manitoba Centennial Concert Hall, their revenue decreased. However, their operating costs remain the same. Their operating costs to operate, for security, for staff, that was still necessary. Hydro, all of their utilities. So the amount that you see there in that area is a reflection of not only the decrease that they've seen from the deficit from lack of participation and bookings and things like that, but it's also as a result of the fact that they were not able to open their doors. So while our funding remained the same, their revenue portion of it was reduced. So I can say again with certainty that there was no reduction at all to any of our outside reporting entities, to Manitoba Film and Music, to any of these organizations during the last year. We were there to lift them up. We were there to support them. And we did that, not only based on the funding that we provide to them for their operating funding, but also the additional funding that we provided through our Arts and Culture Sustainability Fund, which was a $6 million fund. And I would say it's one of the most generous funds across the entire country. As again, I want to refer back to those meetings that I had with other jurisdictions and other ministers. And they called me up after and they said, can you share with me, how you and your department and your government supported and continued to ensure that there was, that sustainability as they emerged from COVID-19. I mean, we were really role models in what we did here. And not only that, but we also provided that $5 million for that Safe at Home program, recognizing that people are hungry for the arts and the culture and for that ability to participate in arts and culture. So that $5 million through that Safe at Home program, it provided Manitobans the opportunity to be entertained, right from the comfort of their home. They could sit there and they could learn, language instruction. They could learn yoga. They could learn so many different opportunities to participate in sports, perhaps even how to bake a cake, how to learn to speak Filipino or tag along and things like that. I mean, it was such a broad array of activities that people could participate and learn from. It really supported people during those very, very dark days during COVID. And just yesterday, as a matter of fact, I had an individual and he was just raving about the benefits of that Safe at Home program. And I've had others who have told me about the Arts and Sustainability Fund that we initiated here as a government. And, it did so much to save, those small businesses, or those small, I should say, arts institutions. As I mentioned yesterday in my comments, there were many, many organizations that benefited from the Arts and Culture Sustainability Fund. I believe, the Winnipeg Art Gallery received $300,000. I'm just going to confirm, I believe that, and this is not reflected in what you see here in the budget, because
Minister's time has expired. The member from Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the previous question that the minister wanted details on as about the 2.6 million cut to culture and sport programs, it's on page 12 of the estimate book, if that helps to answer the question better. Additionally, I would like to ask that the grant assistance to external agencies is also reduced by $527,000. Which agencies are going to have their funding cut and why? Thank you.
The Minister of Sport, Culture, and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it is, it's a little complicated, but I'm going to explain this. So our government has established many endowment funds because we recognize that it's really important that these are heritage buildings, as I said earlier in my opening comments, continue to be able to receive long-term sustainable funding. So this $500,000 that he was referring to was actually funds that were set into our Heritage Trust Endowment Fund. And that was a $5 million trust fund when it was initially established. That was established so that heritage organizations could apply for funding, and it would be matched rather than them having to just apply for money over and over again. So this funding would be matched. It would go into an endowment fund for them. And then as it continued to grow, they could continue to be able to generate revenue so that they could be sustainable well into the future. We did this on many occasions. We did $15 million for the Manitoba Heritage Resource Trust. And so dividends were provided now to organizations of $650,000, where formerly under the NDP government, they had reduced that funding from $350,000 to $266,000. So a significant increase is what we did when we established these endowment funds. So we have that one for $15 million. We have the $2 million military memorial endowment fund, which provides $100,000 dividend every year. And that's the one that I was referring to out in the Selkirk Legion, where they benefited from that money. Some of these funds also went into the Signature Museum Endowment Fund, and that was another $10 million endowment fund that we established. And as a result, our signature museums, there are 7 of them across the province, now receive long-term sustainable funding into perpetuity. They no longer have to worry that, in fact, something could happen. A new government takes over and they say, you know what? We don't care about funding the signature museums. We don't care about funding heritage projects. This money is now here for long-term sustainable funding and into perpetuity. There is no chance that they will ever lose funding as a result of these endowment funds that our government has enacted for these organizations. So I hope that that explains to the member, Mr. Chair, the reason that he sees that difference. But I can tell you with certainty that we have, in fact, added many more tens of millions of dollars into our heritage organizations and our heritage sector through all of these different endowment funds that we have. And again, that was $10 million for the Manitoba Heritage Conservation Trust, $15 million, which was, $15 million for the Manitoba Heritage Conservation Trust, $10 million for the Signature Museums, $5 million for the Heritage Trust, which is a little different, $2 million for the Military Memorial, which I just mentioned is something that's very unique, and it is the only type of an endowment fund of its type across the entire country. And that's because our government really recognizes the significant contributions that our armed forces have made here in our province. And we want to ensure that Manitobans never forget those significant contributions that our veterans made to our province. So it was very important that we established this fund going forward. I mean, another one of those funds that is not noted here, but that $25 million Bay Fund, which we announced just earlier this year. And that was to ensure that that beautiful historic building remains here in our province, in our city of Winnipeg forever, so that it can never, ever be torn down or, undesignated. It has heritage status, and we we plan to ensure that it remains a very, very viable and beautiful building.
Minister's time has
into the
expired.
future.
The member from Notre Dame.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many times did the committee meet in 2020 and 2021 to date? I'm referring to the Gender-Based Violence Committee of Cabinet.
The Minister of Sport, Culture, and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the opposition member for the question. I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on the Gender-Based Violence Committee of Cabinet. And, again, that is the only cabinet committee of its type right across the country. So it is very unique. We recognize that in order to address gender-based violence, that we can't work in silos. We have to work together. So we have members, cabinet members on that committee who are from the Department of Health, the Department of Families, Education, myself, Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations, all of those members who sit together to address gender-based violence. And, it's from those discussions that we have that we were able to, announce that $6.4 million from the Victims Assistance Fund. And through those discussions, we provided organizations like West Central Women's Resource Center with over $800,000 in funding. Never before have they ever received, that amount of funding to address gender-based violence. We were at Gani Ganichuk for that announcement just earlier in the year, and we provided them with, I believe it was close to $300,000 as well to address gender-based violence. And, they were just overwhelmed with that amount of money and the significant effect it will have on women who are exploited here in our province of Manitoba. So that was very important. But I did want to let the member know that we met in 2020 on June 23rd, September 22nd, November 23rd, and then in 2021, we met again in February, May, and July. And we have another meeting, which is currently scheduled for November. So, we do like to be able to meet frequently, to have that opportunity to have the discussions. We quite often have presenters at the meetings who really help to provide us with more information on what we can do to address gender-based violence here in our province. We recognize that there is more to do, but we are committed to working to address this problem. It was just last year, I believe it was December 4th or the 3rd, we released our gender-based violence framework. And, this is a document that is going to guide us for years and years here in our province. And it was not only something that was done from, the members around the table. We collaborated with many, many grassroots organizations, our Indigenous community, our BIPOC community, people from right across the province to ensure that we listen to them. And this is not something that was done, on the cuff. It was done very deliberately with a lot of work and a lot of thought. And, even the NDP government in British Columbia, they reached out to us and they said, you know what? You have this framework, and we think that this is a document that we would be able to look at and utilize in the development of our own framework. I mean, and that's an NDP government. We need to work together to address gender-based violence, not only here in this province, but across all jurisdictions. And so I was very honored, to tell you the truth, when they did reach out to us and said that, this document is something that they feel they would like to utilize in the development of their own framework document. So, this is not an area that we take lightly. We recognize that it's important to work together with all of these communities, with these grassroots communities, with our women's centers, our women's resource centers, our women's shelters, to ensure that women have all of the resources available to them to address and combat gender-based violence here in our province, Manitoba. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member from Notre Dame.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next series of questions will be on women's shelter services. On page 21 of the annual report from 2019-20 to 2020-21, there was a significant decline in the number of residential bed nights at shelters and women's resource centers, as well as a reduction in the number of clients served by the shelters. Is this a result of COVID-19 preventing women from leaving homes and accessing the services they need? And also, does the minister have current statistics about the number of deaths that have been attributed to domestic violence increases in 2020, 2021?
Minister of Sport, Culture, and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that question. Obviously, COVID-19 has had an impact on all of our lives, and it's had an impact on women most significantly. Because of COVID-19, we recognized that there were a lot of women who chose not to opt for residential care services. And so rather than doing that, we saw a significant increase in the use of our crisis line, the use of our texting service that we have. And I believe that that's also because for me, it was important that women knew that service was still available. And so services never stopped in our shelters. They never stopped in our women's resource centers. We ensured that we raised awareness right across the province. We had broadcast on radio and on other different areas of social media, ensuring that women knew that there were safe places when home was no longer safe, that there were places that they could go to visit and to access care and resources right across our province. We did those broadcasts in 12 different languages up in northern and rural communities, recognizing that women during COVID did not want to quite often access services in a shelter. So we ensured that women had that opportunity to be able to go to different areas where they could access that information. So as I said, through crisis lines. We also worked very hard. I mean, the first thing that I did when COVID hit was immediately, talk to all of the shelter directors and said to them, we are here working for you. If there is anything that you need, PPE, if there's hand sanitizer, if there's any accommodation that we can do to make things easier for women to access service, you have that. And for me, that was very important and essential that all of our shelters received that message, that they were a priority during COVID. And we also ensured that we talked to as I said, the shelter directors, and in case that there was a need for some additional beds, we reached out to hotels. We made those arrangements so that the families could be safely contained and continue to receive those resources. It wasn't as if that they were going to be left and isolated. The services would continue, those wraparound services, and we would make sure that women continued to be cared for and receive that compassionate care that they needed. We also had alternate isolation units for individuals who were concerned about COVID. And I can tell you that, we also had provided them with rapid testing in all of the shelters. And I know that in one of the largest shelters here in the city of Winnipeg, we were able to detect 3 cases, or actually to detect before these individuals had any contact with other residents in the shelters. And we stopped, what could have potentially been 60 cases in a shelter by doing that rapid testing and reaching out and ensuring that people had all of those services that they needed in a very prompt and very reliable way. We're also working together, with the federal government, because this is a problem that all jurisdictions are experiencing, is the ability to identify the numbers when it comes to domestic violence and gender-based violence. So, we are working on a national action plan, all of the provinces across the entire nation, to develop a plan that can help us to learn more about domestic violence and, of course, how it relates to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And I've had, the opportunity to listen to our federal representatives and to other provincial representatives and really look to developing this plan so we can work together to ensure that we have better services for women very broadly. I mean, here in the province of Manitoba, as I said, it has been my priority right from the
Minister's
onset.
time has expired. The member from Notre Dame.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The amount of funding to external agencies that deal with domestic violence decreased this past year. Why did the funding decrease for shelters and for women's resource centers? This is found on page 22 in the annual report.
The Honourable Minister for Sport, Culture and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to let my opposition critic know that there was not a decrease. What that was as a result of the family law modernization strategy that we had developed, which is something that we were working together with the Department of Justice. We took the money that we had delegated for the Heart Medicine Lodge, or it's known as well as the Gani Ganichuk, and the Winnipeg's Children Access Center. We took those funds and we moved them into the Department of Justice to the Family Law Modernization Strategy, because that was a better fit for them. We were told by those organizations that we wanted to address the concerns that a lot of families had when they had to go to court, whether it be because of violence, whether it be because of domestic issues, marital breakup, things like that. So rather than have that money be with us in this department, which was not a good fit, we moved it over to Justice, to the Family Law Modernization Strategy, so that we try to keep people out of the courts as much as possible. We want to give them those supports, those wraparound supports, so that them and their families don't have to suffer the consequences of going before a judge and having to be in a court system, which could be very cold and at times very difficult for people who are vulnerable to have to go through another hurdle, so to speak. So by doing this, it provides those families, those women, those children the opportunity to avoid that court system and be involved in a different way of adjudicating a family law.
The member for Notre Dame.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does the minister fund any programs or resources at women's shelters that aim to support and accommodate the specific needs of women from ethnic or newcomer communities, specifically language services, religious dietary needs, or culturally appropriate counseling or counseling provided in other languages?
The Minister of Sport, Culture, and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I appreciate the question from the member opposite. I'm pleased to advise that we provide funding to West Central Women's Resource Center and also to North End Women's Resource Center. And, you know, in those communities, they provide funding to many, many different ethnocultural communities. They are located, both of them, in the heart of the city. And, you know, just as a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to meet with Lori English, who is the executive director from West Central Women's Resource Center, where we talked about all of the good work that they do. And we talked about that $800,000 that they had available to them through the Victims Assistance Fund, which really allowed them the opportunity to do even more outreach in that community. I was also happy to, I was humbled to be able to provide them as well, Lori, with funding for her community van. She was at the point where they almost thought that they would have to stop that project. And you know, what they do is with that van is they go out and they reach out to the most vulnerable people in the community. So I was very humbled, as I said, to be able to provide them with that funding so that they could continue to do that good work. Also, with regard to West Central Women's Resource Center, for years and years and years, Lori English had reached out to the former NDP government asking for sustainable funding, asking for that funding so that they could continue to do that work on a regular basis to help all of these people, these vulnerable people in their community. And so it was our government who, now provides them with that long-term sustainable funding so that she doesn't have to be concerned anymore about whether or not she will be able to operate that child daycare in their facility or be able to reach out to those ethnocultural communities to teach them and to provide them supports that they really need. Same with North End Women's Centre. We provide them with that support, and they have that ability to reach out to many of those ethnocultural communities. Norwest Co-op, another organization that we fund. The Healthy Muslims Families, we also funded through the Victims Assistance Fund. And we provided $5,000 to an organization called Bright Mamas, so that they learned to do cooking and budgeting. So yes, we are reaching out to all communities. Again, when we did our awareness campaign for domestic violence, we ensured that it was in 12 different languages because we recognize that we are a very diverse province and that we have to be able to provide people that information in their own language so they feel comfortable. And so that is what we did, Mr. Chair. We made sure that individuals received the information in a language that they understood. We also printed posters in I believe it was 12 or 13 different languages so that people who don't, that English is not their comfortable language, so that they were also informed and that they were aware of the services that were available to them. So these are just a few of, some of the funding that we provide. But, I've also talked to Grand Chief Settee, and we've listened to him just recently talked about shelters and the importance of them being, relative to those people, those vulnerable people who are utilizing them. And so, thanks to those conversations that we've had with Grand Chief Settee and Grand Chief Arlen Dumas, we are able to make very positive changes just by listening to them, by listening to the Indigenous people, by listening to individuals who are involved in the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. And we will continue to do that because my focus is ensuring that women have the supports they need when they need them, not only during COVID, but even as we emerge through COVID, we need to ensure that women have.
The member from Notre Dame. The member from Burroughs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I ask the Minister about Safe at Home Manitoba? How much has been paid out to date from the Safe at Home Manitoba program? And could the Minister provide a breakdown of the various projects that received funding and the amount of funding provided?
The Minister of Sport, Culture and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I really appreciate that question from my opposition critic. So that was a $5 million program. And as I said before, it was a very innovative program because, we recognize that there were many dark days that people, that seniors, that young people, that children, that they faced during that dark time of COVID. And, physical activity was shut down at recreation centers. People didn't have the ability to gather as they normally would. It's not only a culture and an issue that relates to the arts. This is something that really relates to people and to families, and the impact that it had not only on people's physical health, COVID-19, but on their mental health as well. So, again, this is one of these programs that I heard from my colleagues, other ministers across the country, and they said, this is a model that we want to copy. It's something that they recognized made such a difference in the lives of people during COVID. There was over 300 applications. So that's how popular it was. We initially started with one intake, and then because realizing that it was such a popular program, we expanded it. And so we had a second intake. And I would love to be able to tell the member all of the different projects, but it's about half an inch thick, all of the documentation that I have here. So, I will just talk about, I'll name a few. The Steinbach Arts Council, they received $25,800. The Whitemouth River Recreation Commission, they received $20,000. The Rat River stay-at-home activities for kids, they received $6,000. Art by Annie, a virtual paint night, received $8,000. The Bibliothèque Taché Library, they received $5,000 for online storytelling. The L. Simmons, that entertainer that everybody loves, he did a project, it was called Sounds Crazy. And what it was is just a bunch of short, high quality videos, really to entertain kids and adults as well. And so that was a $12,000 program. The Falcon Trails Resorts, they received $13,170. And that was just about in having the opportunity for people to enjoy the outdoors and really understand what Manitoba, what's so special about Manitoba. And we know that many newcomers don't have that opportunity, and they've never had the opportunity to go out and really experience our great outdoors, especially in the middle of winter. So, that there were so many successful programs. The Canadian Mental Health Association, $20,000. The Boyne Regional Library, another $10,000. Town of Morris, $5,000. The Winkler Family Resource Center for lending libraries, $10,000. The City of Morden for snowshoe rentals, which is really exciting, $6,400. And the list goes on and on and on. McDonald's Services for seniors, for telephone bingo. Like, how unique is that, right? We know a lot of seniors don't have access to the internet. $2,500. We've got the St. Andrews, the Heritage Center. They did virtual museum programs and visits and events, another $11,000. The South Interlake 55 plus group, they did creative journaling. And that was a smaller amount, but that was $705. And to them, that really made a difference in their community. The Gimli Film Fest, they had the opportunity to do home movie nights and archived movies. The Grosse Isle Memorial Park Recreation Club, they did It Takes the Village to Stay Home. So they did all sorts of really exciting and unique projects to encourage people to stay home. I think they did some art for paint by numbers. They did, and actually a lot of these different organizations actually provided all of the art supplies. So you signed up to participate, and then they had, maybe it was the paintbrushes, the paints, the art supplies, whatever they needed, sent to these folks so that they could participate in these awesome programs. The town of the Paw, a snowshoe project, the Paw Arts Council, $39,000 for their stay-at-home program. That was to encourage individuals
The minister's time has expired. Member from Burrows.
Mr. Chair, this is my last question, and it's about Curling Center for Excellence. And MNP was identified as the successful proponent for the RFP posted to develop a business plan for the ICCE. Has this business plan been completed? If not, when it will be completed? If yes, could the minister undertake to provide a copy of the report? How much was the contract with MNP, and how much has been paid to date? And yeah, that's it.
The Minister of Sport, Culture, and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you to my opposition critic for the question. I appreciate it. Now, I just wanted to explain to the members in that committee room that the ICE is managed by a not-for-profit organization. So it is it's not managed by individuals in our government, and they are the organization that undertook that business plan with Myers Norris Penny, recognizing that this was a project that really required expertise. And while they have knowledge on that board and that not-for-profit committee, it's important that they did reach out to Myers Norris Penny, who is renowned, for as accountants here in Manitoba and providing that kind of a service. So they did that. That has been completed. That business model. And now, as a result of that, they are looking at focusing not only on what the original inception was to be a curling center of excellence global, but we are focusing, or they are focusing as well now, on ensuring that this curling center is going to be grassroots. So it is going to be an area that is going to be utilized by new immigrants and our Indigenous people, to give them that opportunity to learn the beautiful sport of curling. We are working together, or they are working together. I'm sorry, I should say that, to reiterate the fact that they're working with Curl Canada, who is the federal sport organization that's responsible for curling in our country. They're also working with the provincial curling authority, Curl Manitoba, because we recognize that this curling center is not only something that is going to be available for international people to come in and practice and learn the art of curling. This is a grassroots plan. This is a plan to ensure that Manitobans, that children, that students, that the seniors, people from all walks of life have the opportunity to come to that curling center and to learn that skill of curling, because it really is a skill. And so, as we are looking forward to the development of this curling center, or as they are, we recognize that we can't, again, just focus in one area. Manitoba is such a diverse province, and I'm very proud to say that here in Manitoba, I would say that we really are the most diverse province in terms of our ethnocultural communities. And so it's important that all members of our population have that opportunity to learn about this game, to learn about this sport. And it's also going to provide them an opportunity to get active. I mean, I myself am not a curler, but my one son curled. And, it really is an activity that does require you to be very physically fit. Of course, there is other ways of curling. You don't have to actually get down on the ice and push the rock in that way. There's broom curling. I believe that's the correct terminology. I'm not a curler, so don't quote me on that. But this is really an opportunity for people to learn and enjoy the game, not just to learn it at a high level, but it's an opportunity for people to learn it at a very grassroots level. And so, that's why, I think it's important that this facility is going to open its doors to everyone. And that's why it's important that we have reached out to the federal and the provincial sports organizations to have them involved in it. And I know that there is a remarkable amount of interest from many, many different sectors already, many different individuals in our population here in Manitoba, whether, as I said, it's the senior population or the youth or the teens. for everyone who is able to participate.
The minister's time has expired. The member from Tyndall Park.
Chairperson, and I'd like to thank the NDP. They've given me the opportunity here to ask 2 questions. I do have a lot of questions to ask about the estimates book as well as the annual report, but just for the sake of my 2 questions, I'm going to ask questions that come from groups in my constituency. The first question is, high school students have really taken the lead on the initiative of free menstrual products in public spaces and ensuring it is affordable to all women. Has there been any movement on this front? And are there any plans, ideally short-term or long-term, to achieve this?
The Honorable Minister of Sport, Culture and Heritage.
Again, Mr. Chair, and thank you as well to my opposition critic. We recognize that this is an important issue for women and girls and other individuals, whether they are at school, whether they are on the field or elsewhere. And this is an issue that has affected most of us women in our lives. Unfortunately, there's been times when you don't have that ability to have that product with you. You mentioned the fact that, the NDP had mentioned this in the past. We are aware that some Manitoba schools do voluntarily already provide those menstrual products available free to students. And it really is at their discretion. Our government provided an additional $427 million in education funding in the province of Manitoba. And this is more funding than, the former government ever provided to education here in the province of Manitoba. So that funding is available to them. There is that discretionary funding that they have that ability to determine, how they want to spend those funds. And so if they choose to spend those funds on, as I said, tampons or cups or pads, that is at their discretion. I mean, this is not something that any of us can hide from. I mean, we recognize that products are available in some schools, but perhaps we need to nudge those schools and all of those school divisions to say, you know what, you have a responsibility, you have some additional funding available, have those products available, whether in the office. I'm not sure what the process is in some of those school divisions where they do provide, those products for women and for other individuals who need them. I would say those school divisions should, in fact, talk to those schools and listen to them and say, you've got the discretion to provide those products to women and girls and other individuals that need them.
The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, and I'd like to thank the Minister for her answer. My next question is just about yesterday, actually, how we unanimously passed a resolution acknowledging the incredible volunteerism that goes behind Folklorama, past and present, and I want to thank the minister for her collaboration on that resolution. My question is, what does the department plan to do specifically over the next year for Folklorama?
The Honorable Minister of Sport, Culture and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again to the member from Tyndall Park for that question. And you know, I just want to say to you, thank you for giving me this opportunity to collaborate with you, you know, on introducing this piece of legislation. You know, I was very, very proud to be able to speak in the chamber about Folklorama, because it's very near and dear to my heart. And I know that the member from Tyndall Park also understands the importance of our very rich ethnic cultural diversity that we have here in our province. And as I said, you know, to be at a Polish event when she raised this issue with me, I think that's very telling of the type of community that we have here in Manitoba, where you know, we're always involved in our ethnic community and ensuring that they have all of the opportunity to really promote their own traditions, their own heritage, you know, their food, their dance, all of that really makes us so special here in Manitoba. So with regard to Folklorama, you know, since the inception of COVID, we continue to provide them with the same reliable, responsible funding that they always received, because we recognize that it's not always about the in-person events. So this year, Folklorama hosted a virtual weekend of Folklorama, where people had the opportunity to log on and tune in to view many, many different ethnic and cultural I wouldn't say pavilions, but, you know, dance and music and singing. And I think there was even an opportunity to have food delivered to your house, if that was something that you were interested. I mean, for a cost, they couldn't cover those costs. But, you know, it was so important for us that we continue to provide that funding, not only for Folklorama, but for other organizations or festivals like Manitowabi. You know, they have usually every year they host a huge powwow at the convention center. So we ensure that they continue to receive that reliable, sustainable funding well into the future. And we also, through our Arts and Culture Sustainability Fund, Folklorama received $121,000. So that was of great assistance to them, and also $50,000 through our stay-at-home program. So we realize the importance of Folklorama. We realize the importance of our heritage, of our diversity, and how much Manitobans really love that opportunity to have more insight into other ethnic communities. And Folklorama really provides us that opportunity to see all of the different ethnic communities and their traditions. And I have to tell you that when I visited every one of those Folklorama pavilions back in 2017, you know, every one of those communities embraces all of the visitors in such a warm and such a warm manner. I mean, I just felt embraced every time I went, and everybody was so proud of their culture and so proud of their heritage and so proud of their traditions that I think it's hard for anybody to say anything negative about Folklorama. And that's why for us as a government, it was so important that we continue to provide them that reliable funding, so that next year, you know, as we emerge from COVID, that we're going to be ready to go again and ready to be able to provide all of that wonderful entertainment and all of that wonderful culture that people in Manitoba here just love. So it really was an honor for me to be able to, my throat is getting dry, I'm sorry, but it really was an honor for me to be able to speak in favor of the member from Tyndall Park's resolution. And I look forward to it becoming a legislation in the very near future. And I look forward to visiting some pavilions with her next year, well into the future. So thank you for that question. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Hearing no further questions, we will now proceed to the consideration of resolutions. At this point, we will allow all virtual members to unmute their mics so that they can respond to the question. I will now call Resolution 14.2. Be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $54,188,000 for sport, culture, and heritage, culture, and sport programs for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 14.3. Be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $2,253,000 for sport, culture, and heritage, information resources for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. The last item to be considered for these estimates is item 14.1A, the minister's salary contained in resolution 14.1. The floor is now open for questions. Hearing no questions, proceed to resolution 14.1. Be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $15,159,000 for sport, culture, and heritage, administration, and finance for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. This completes the estimates of the Department of Sport, Culture, and Heritage. Thank you. The next set of estimates to be considered by this section of the committee supply is the Department of Municipal Relations. Shall we briefly recess to allow the minister and critics the opportunity to prepare for the commencement of the next department? We are therefore on a short recess. When the Minister of Municipal Relations is ready to proceed, we'll just ask you to turn your camera on and we'll call us back to order. Will the Committee of Supply please come to order? This section of the Committee of Supply will now consider the estimates of the Department of Municipal Relations. Does the Honourable Minister have an opening statement?
Yes, I do, but I just turned my camera on, Mr. Chair, to let you know that we share staff with Sport, Culture, and Heritage. So if you just give me a few minutes for them to make it up here, I'd appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Minister of Municipal Relations for his opening statement.
Good day. I'm pleased to be able to make a few comments on the 21-22 estimates and discuss some of the important activities of the Department of Municipal Relations. So before I begin, I'd first like to acknowledge the hardworking staff in my department, and some do double duty, as you heard, with sport, culture, and heritage, and all the professional work that they do with Manitoba municipalities and the Association of AMM, Planning District, Mutual Aid Districts, AMBM, nonprofit and community development organizations, and many, many other stakeholders. So I'm committed to delivering on the mandate I've been given as Minister of Municipal Relations, and we continue to build a better, more efficient, responsive, and open government that provides quality services to communities across Manitoba. So I guess I'll start throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Our department has undertaken a number of initiatives to provide comprehensive and timely support and information to municipalities relating to public health orders and reducing the spread of COVID-19. In November of 2020, Municipal Relations launched the Municipal Enforcement Support Program, which provides municipalities with financial support, training, and logistical support to enforce public health orders and leverage local capacity to help protect Manitoba communities. With public health orders still in place, and as part of our government's ongoing efforts to protect Manitobans from the spread of COVID-19, this program has been extended to December 31st, 2021. At a total estimated investment up to $2.9 million. So the $500 million Manitoba Restart Program was designed to help advance economic recovery as the province moves forward through COVID-19 pandemic. And so this program includes $230 million to municipalities in 2021 to immediately support local infrastructure projects under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, and $50 million dedicated to address the backlog in water and sewer infrastructure improvement projects in municipalities and provincial parks. Our COVID-19 funding support also includes a one-time top-up grant of $10,000 to municipal sponsored handy transit services funded under their Mobility Disadvantaged Transportation Program to facilitate transportation services for seniors and others with mobility issues to and from COVID vaccination sites. We will continue to adopt and respond to the needs of our municipalities and clients as the COVID environment evolves. So despite these challenging times, the Government of Manitoba continues to make significant investments towards the operational and infrastructure needs of local government and support of economic development and the well-being of Manitobans in their communities. Budget 2021 maintains the municipal operating basket funding of $121.2 million to the City of Winnipeg and $51.3 million to municipalities outside of Winnipeg. So municipalities can use this unconditional operating funding to address local priorities as they see fit, unconditional funding. Our government also continues to deliver on commitment to provide predictability to municipalities in planning their priority infrastructure projects. So under Manitoba's strategic infrastructure basket, Winnipeg will again receive the $75.3 million, and $61.7 million is targeted to communities in rural and northern Manitoba, including $15.8 million for Manitoba Water Services Board projects. Our government will continue to provide basket funding to municipalities, providing predictability, fair say, and unprecedented flexibility over the investment of provincial funds at the local level. So in response to the fiscal pressures resulting from COVID-19, our government increased this year's investment in Building Sustainable Communities program by over $5 million. This increased funding has primarily been dedicated to larger scale community capital projects, increasing the maximum grant level to 50% of eligible project costs up to a maximum of $300,000. And then this is for a significant number of projects, I might add. I'm pleased to advise that a total of $13.5 million has been approved for over 300 projects across Manitoba this year, providing a much needed boost to community organizations. I'm also pleased to note that Municipal Relations has doubled the level of funding available for Urban Hometown and Green Team, as Manitoba recognizes the valuable support this program offers communities and nonprofit organizations. Through this year's Urban Hometown Green Team program, Municipal Relations had approved up to $10 million in support to 691 projects, and they're expected to provide over 2,000 youth with the work experience they need to take advantage of future career opportunities. Municipal Relations has continued to implement key planning recommendations from the Treasury Board Secretariat. These changes are critical to the municipal and provincial growth plan and will adopt best practices and ensure greater transparency, consistency, and accountability across the province. Our department is acting on these recommendations. Critical steps taken to date include the building designation regulation, which was adopted in January, which allowed municipalities to utilize third-party building inspectors. The planning amendment in the City of Winnipeg Charter Amendment Act, which is Bill 37, passed on May 20th and will come into effect with the publishing of associated regulations and stakeholder support materials, including the new capital planning regulation and major development regulation. This legislation and related regulations and guidelines create a province-wide framework that will be established to support a coordinated approach to planning and development, reduce planning delays, and enhance planning appeals. So once in place, the measures will address gaps in Manitoba's regulatory framework by mandating regional approaches to planning, introducing service standards for planning and permitting, and expanding the appeal process in cases where differences cannot easily be resolved between proponent and municipal authorities. So these changes address the significant economic costs related to unnecessary permitting delays, and the report showed that up to 17 million negative impact on GDP and 2 million negative impact on provincial and municipal revenues, and this is each and every day. So we will ensure that the board is equipped to manage potential increased appeals or caseloads. So Budget 2021 has increased resources for the Manitoba Municipal Board by $333,000 or 42%, and it includes 2 new staff to enhance the board's capacity in providing timely hearings. Manitoba is working with stakeholders to improve the municipal board services and reduce costs, align with other jurisdictions, and create a simplified and fair process for the appeals. The municipal board undertook the biggest challenge, transformation under this government, addressing the backlog of assessment appeals that are government inherited from the 17 years of NDP. The department and municipal board staff took a Made in Manitoba approach called appeal management to help clear this backlog. In 2018, the municipal board had 2,458 outstanding appeals that would have taken an estimated 9.5 years to complete. This transformation resulted in 1,790 appeals closing, which was 73% of the outstanding appeals. 5 years ago, a file could wait up to 8 years to be scheduled. So I'm proud to say that we are now dealing with appeals from the current year of 2021. This is what cutting red tape is all about. So our government aims to improve the efficiency and transparency and accountability of planning, while also enhancing opportunities for economic growth in communities across the province. This is critical to support response and recovery efforts as we begin to emerge from challenges created by the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And we thank the minister for those comments. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? No. So under Manitoba practice, debate on the minister's salary is the last item considered for the department in the Committee of Supply. Accordingly, we shall now defer consideration of line item 13.1A contained in resolution 13.1. And for the final time, does the committee wish to proceed through the estimates of this department in chronologically or have a global discussion? Is there a global discussion? Thank you. So we will proceed in a global discussion. The floor is now open for questions. The member from Concordia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to begin this afternoon by asking the minister about the North End wastewater treatment plant. Maybe the minister could just give us an update on that project. I understand there was a request from the government to explore a P3 option, which I know went through the city process. I wanted to know, has that part of the process been completed? And in terms of the provincial funding, is that gotten the green light? Is the project ready to go from the provincial standpoint?
The Minister of Municipal Relations.
Yeah, I don't see a clock showing up on my screen. I just didn't want to accidentally run out of time. Is there somebody there that can address that, or like I'm logged in on a device here, but it doesn't show the countdown on. I thought I've seen that.
Yeah, so just for the minister, if you could go ahead and answer the question, and then we'll have the moderator get a hold of you as soon as you're done, because it is on the screen. So just in lieu of time, if you wouldn't mind. So Minister of Municipal Relations.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd like to welcome my critic and thank him for his first question and the time that he's putting in here today. And so that question is for central services, there, as you well know, I'm sure the critic knows as well that that falls under him, and the ISIP funding, and that all falls under Minister Helwer. I believe I'm allowed to say his name in committee. If not, I'll say the Minister of Central Services. But I can tell you that the officials and departments are hard at work and collaborating with the city of Winnipeg on how to move forward, and we're there to help them get through this process. And I think the ultimate goal is to get the project done on budget and on time. And I think our government has a record of definitely doing that. And the goal is to obviously reduce the nutrient load in Lake Winnipeg. I think everybody has probably been out to Lake Winnipeg at one time or another, whether it's Gimli or Matlock or Grand Beach or Victoria Beach, any of those around the lake, and it's a concern. There's times where when they want to go swimming with their family, there's warnings, E. coli warnings for the lake and the swimming and the areas along the beaches. So that's very important. I believe the city of Winnipeg, and I'm just these are round figures, but it's about 7% of the nutrient loading in Lake Winnipeg comes from the city of Winnipeg, which is the largest point source to my knowledge. And it would be, if it's in our control to control that, we need to invest in projects like this. So it is definitely something that we're interested in government. And I think, as people know, I don't live on Lake Winnipeg. I live on Lake Manitoba, but it's the same concern. Our largest nutrient source is through the portage diversion when it's operated on Lake Manitoba. The rest of its watersheds are relatively nutrient free compared to that specific source. So, like, just from when I was a kid, which is getting longer and longer ago now, I remember chasing crawfish in the lake, and we could see through the bottom to the water, to the lake bottom, and in a couple of feet of water. It is a very shallow lake, and therefore it with a mud bottom, so it often becomes murky after a large wind. But you can't see that now, and a lot of that I would attribute to nutrient loading. I believe the bathymetry was taken of the mouth of the portage diversion a few years ago now, and that is actually the delta is actually 3 feet shallower than it was when the portage diversion was originally built. So there's obviously a lot of silt and nutrients that comes through that, and there'd be no different with the Red River and depositing those nutrients into Lake Winnipeg. So the North End Water Pollution Control Center is exceptionally important to the health of Lake Winnipeg, and I think we can all relate to the commercial fishermen and anglers alike. For the health of Lake Winnipeg, there's concerns. I'm sure you see some of the locals that they have algae that attach to their nets, and it's not ideal for commercial fishing or for angling. And I think we've all seen pictures, whether they're done via satellite or locally off of boats that sadly show the algae blooms that are growing on Lake Winnipeg, and I think it's the science shows that it's strictly due to nutrient loading. So again, Central Services will.
The minister's time has expired. And just for the benefit of the committee, we are an extension of the House, so I will ask that we do refer to other members by title or position. And also to the minister, if you check your chat function on your Zoom, the moderator is trying to address with you. So we'll move on to the next question for the member from Concordia.
I'm sure the minister can appreciate the fact that we're, we've got 45 minutes to get through his department. So I'm just, as a courtesy asking that he keep his answers as relevant, I guess, as possible. Talking about, crayfish and when he was a kid, I think he said, I don't know. Anyway, it's not as helpful. Now, I'm just gonna, I guess, ask a quick follow-up to that question. I'm getting the sense that he's not willing to answer any questions with regards to the wastewater treatment plant, the North End wastewater treatment plant. I do hope that he would just shed some light from the perspective of his department. I'm assuming they've had some conversations with his counterparts at the city. I know that his government was asking for a P3 option. I believe that was rejected by the city wholesale. So I just want to make sure that the money is not in jeopardy, that it's still ready to flow. And we are concerned because there are, I know contracts are being awarded. And this is a perfect example of a project where a community benefit agreement could really be helpful to ensure that the project goes ahead quickly, and that Manitoba jobs are prioritized, and that we make sure that Manitoba companies who are ready to do the work, who are ready to get their folks to work on this great project, they are champing at the bit to make this happen. But they're concerned because companies that have been awarded contracts to this point may not share those same values. So I just wanted to gauge the minister's input on that, and if he can just, was there any conversations that he's had with his counterparts at the city, and are those negotiations and those conversations still ongoing? Is the provincial money ready to flow, or is he contemplating some of these mechanisms that could potentially jumpstart and kickstart the Manitoba economy?
Minister of Municipal Relations.
Yeah, I apologize. I was just reading stuff from the moderator there. We've successfully gotten the time clock up, but I was concentrating on that. I was wondering if the critic, if he doesn't mind, and I apologize for missing his questions and his points in there. But if again, I apologize. But if you could please repeat the question. Sorry about that.
The member from Concordia.
Well, I guess my main point was that time is short, so I hope that the minister will be quick in his answers. But the question was, is he prepared to answer questions about the North End wastewater treatment plant? And if so, or if he can give any kind of context about the conversations that have happened between his officials or himself and his counterparts at the city. Is the provincial money flowing or ready to be flowed as soon as the city is ready to begin construction? And I guess the underlying question are there any further strings attached to that flowing of that money? Or has the province said, yeah, go ahead? Or are you guys exploring any kind of community benefit agreements or other ways that we can keep jobs in Manitoba?
The Minister of Municipal Relations.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, most definitely willing to answer questions that fall under the Department of Municipal Relations. So I'll give you a little bit of the money that we've flowed. So far, we have flowed $182.6 million. So that is the province's entire share of phase one of the project, and then the remainder is half of phase two. So that money is actually flowed, and it is in the City of Winnipeg bank accounts. So you had a question about strings attached, and that would be an answer that would have to come from the Minister of Central Services. There is a commitment on our government and our part to ensure that this moves forward. Like, we're a partner at the table, I'm sure, as you're aware. We have flowed the money far sooner than the project to encourage to get all people at the table, all levels of government. And I think it's a good collaborative approach that we take between the City of Winnipeg and the provincial government, and we have a federal partner at the table as well with a significant input. So, but now you had a question as well, and I jotted them all down here, so I'll try and get to them about P3 discussions. So again, that is an answer that would have to be answered by Central Services. That department is the lead on this file. But I can confirm that $182.6 million was sent to the City of Winnipeg and received, and it is in their bank account. So I think I'll leave it at that, and maybe you might want to elaborate with that information.
And just before I recognize the next question, just please a quick reminder that all questions and answers must be directed through the chair. So with that, to the member from Concordia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that is helpful. The final question I have with regards to this project is just whether the minister could provide a copy of the report that was done by Deloitte in regards to the P3s and the water treatment plant. This was a report, I believe, that may have been available last quarter, but I just, if the minister could provide a copy for the committee, that would be appreciated.
Minister of Municipal Relations.
Yeah, I was just if I can get the member to get a little more specific with which report he's talking about. If he could just elaborate a little bit, if he doesn't mind.
The member from Concordia.
Well, yeah, and I can, this is the information I have in front of me, and I have to admit that, I imagine there's a lot of reports from Deloitte and other outside consultants. I see the member for Lactabani is agreeing with that. He says there's so many of them, so I'm not sure exactly. I'll see if I can get a better description of it so that the minister can sift through his file of outside consultants' reports and get back to us. I wanted to ask the minister a little bit about analysis that his department may have done on tax rebates with regards to the education property tax. Just wondering if the minister can explain what sorts of analysis their department has done with regards to those education tax rebates for commercial properties. And does the minister anticipate that or how much does the minister anticipate commercial properties will receive in rebates once the elimination of the education property tax is complete?
Minister of Municipal Relations.
Yeah, I'm unmuted, I believe. Okay. So I think the Deloitte report that the critic was talking about, I believe it was commissioned by the city of Winnipeg. We don't have a report that was sent here by them, but I'm guessing that's the one that the critic is talking about. And it hasn't been shared with this department, and so maybe that question would be for central services if it was shared with them, and maybe it's en route over here that they may they may have it, but to my knowledge it hasn't been shared by the city of Winnipeg to this department.
The member from Concordia.
All right, well, we'll get to the bottom of which report we're looking for from an outside consultant. Will the minister provide any analysis that they have done with regards to the education tax rebates for commercial property? And specifically, how much does the minister anticipate that commercial properties will receive in rebates with the elimination?
Minister of Municipal Relations.
Yeah, so I'm assuming it was commercial across the province, not just the city of Winnipeg. So I'm going to make that assumption with the question. So in 2021, there's going to be a total of $248 million, which consists of, it's well publicized, but 25% of that is reduction for residential, 25% reduction for farm, and 10% reduction for commercial. But that number will change as assessment values change. So I think probably I'm assuming, and I shouldn't make that assumption, but if the member isn't a homeowner, I'm sure he would know somebody that is, and your assessment changes every couple of years, and then the value on that property as it goes up. Prudent municipalities and stuff, they often drop the mill rate to so the general taxes don't go up. But if the mill rate remains the same, it obviously it will generate more income. So it's pretty tough to kind of predict over the period of full elimination of what those dollar values would accumulate to. Every couple of years they would change as assessment changes, and I'm sure the members aware of City of Winnipeg is in charge of their assessment, and the province does assessment for municipalities around everything outside of the City of Winnipeg. But more directly, I believe that this is a finance program, so this question should be directed to the Minister of Finance. The Municipal Relations has a good, fulsome part in it, but the analysis is done by the Minister or the Finance Department, and the Minister would be the one who would probably be able to give you a more fulsome answer on this. So I'll probably leave it there in case he wants to expand on something that does fall under this department, and then we can continue that conversation.
The member from Concordia.
Okay, so I'm to understand that the department itself hasn't done any of this analysis, but the minister is saying that the Department of Finance has, and that his department obviously has access to it. He's answering questions on it. So I think that's helpful if the minister can continue on then and answer the questions. What we're asking about there is for commercial properties, how much will they receive in rebates, total figure, once the elimination is completed? And then I guess the same question with regards to secondary properties. How much does the minister anticipate in secondary properties will receive in rebates with the elimination of the education portion of the property tax?
Minister of Municipal Relations.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. I'm just trying to get a fulsome answer for you here. So I'm sure, so the question is after the phase out. I'll answer what is current here in a minute, but it's very hard to tell what is going to be after the phase out because as the member well knows, Bill 37 is going to stimulate a lot of growth. I mean, our government has been doing outstanding. We've had a huge pile of investment over the years in Manitoba. I think we have the largest capital investment out of I think North America for quite a few years in a row, and I'll have to get an answer for him on where we're predicting we're going to land again this year. So some of the variables is just to understand why I can't give them an answer on his question entirely. Is it depends on the length of time that it's phased out over. I mean, we've made commitments, and this is a government that keeps our commitments, but that timeline is many assessment cycles away. So every assessment cycle that you have will change the answer. So it's impossible to answer the question as stated, but there's assessment, there's growth, and the question on the secondary property, and I'm assuming he means cottages or somebody owns more than one property. I'll answer that here right away, and I'll get to the rest of the answer here in a second. But there's nowhere on your assessment where it says it's a secondary property. Either it's a residential or a farm or commercial. There's even pipeline, rail, and then there's an other category. So if you don't fall into some of those, you may very well fall into the other category. So a cottage falls under is a dwelling, and that would fall under residential, whether it's a primary residence, and I think that's what your question was, and I just want to answer it as if that's what your question was. So the secondary property, a cottage is a dwelling, which is on your tax bill, you'll see residential on it. So it will not distinguish whether it's primary or secondary. And there is no definition as a cottage at all. I mean, your driver's license will show what's your primary residence, and that's kind of more for the federal government and capital gains and all that money that there. So more directly, this year is 41. This year, as in 2021, is $41 million. Is what it is, rounded, of course. It's not $41 million right to the penny. And 16.5% of that is commercial. So he can kind of do the reverse math there, I suppose. Where commercial is 10% of that. And I'll heed the advice of the chair. I apologize, Mr. Chair. I'll do it before you warn me again. I'm supposed to be saying the member's question, and it's my first go around at this, so you don't have to give me a lecture here right away, although I may deserve it, but I will try and refer to it as the member's question. But anyway, so it's 16.5% of $41 million. $41 million is 16. Let me rephrase that. There's 248 million. Better get this out here. So 41 million this year is 16.5%, and that is how much it is commercially this year. Is $41 million. So he can try and do the math and string it out and predict what it is going to be many years from now. And then we'll leave it at that.
The member from Concordia.
The minister mentioned Bill 37, so I do want to ask a question before we run out of time on Bill 37. He mentioned that the working group is done their work, I understand, and that they are getting ready to announce what those regulations are going to be. At the same time, we heard this week, or I guess maybe it was end of last week, from Cam Blight and the AMM, and Mr. Blight was, quite critical of the government and of the process with regards to Bill 37. And this was very much in line with some of the criticisms that we heard during the public hearing process for Bill 37 as well. Not only from municipalities and from the AMM at that time, but also from developers and others who are also on the working group in developing Bill 37. So my question is, I guess the timing of exactly when those regulations are to be expected, but maybe the minister can just, give us some insight why he thinks Cam Blight took to write an editorial. Presumably he sits on this working group, he knows what these final regulations are going to look like, and yet he took it upon himself to go out and be critical of the minister and of the government. Which is, probably not advantageous if you're actually at the table and actually being listened to. You'd probably want to go through that process if you're being included in some of the development of this process. So maybe the minister can just give us some insight why he thinks Cam Blight would write an editorial like that, would express his frustrations, and the timing that the final regulations will be disclosed.
Minister of Municipal Relations.
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. Or I'd like to thank the member for that question. I said you again. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Well, first of all, I want to thank all of the stakeholders that are involved in the working group that's doing this hard work. The department along with them, and we value all their advice that they're giving us on how to shape this and move forward. Now, all the Reeves and mayors and councillors, hats off to them. There are our grassroots politicians, and I think most people here know that I was a councillor for 4 years, and they're on the front line of for elected officials, and I just want to take my hats off to them. And so they go through a process, and they through AMM, and they elect a leader, which is Cam Blight, and he's been great. We talk lots. We're in touch quite often, and AMM is in good hands with his leadership. He's very open for communications. He's got my personal number, and we chat quite often. So I don't believe Cam sits on the working group himself, but his staff sit on the working group. And the working group continues to give us advice. And when these regulations are drawn up and concluded, I'm sure the member opposite is aware that we have a 45-day consultation period, which our government brought in because we value consultation, and the previous government never ever welcomed consultation. So it goes through that fulsome consultation before moving forward. We're a listening government. We're timely and we're transparent. And we also make changes to address stakeholder concerns. So I don't know if we really need any lessons from the member opposite, but then there's lots of councillors and mayors and Reeves that bring their concerns forward, and whether that's through AMM or lots of them contact me directly, and we have good fulsome conversations about these consultations. So we do consult a lot, and I want to thank the member opposite for pointing out the working group, and him recognizing the hard work that they're doing and how they're shaping this how this bill needs to move forward. But I think the member, maybe if he has some spare time on the weekend, he needs to pick up a book by Doug Griffiths. It's called 13 Ways to Kill Your Community. And I think the member opposite might be stuck on chapter 10. And that chapter is titled, if I'm going from memory here, but I think it's titled Reject Everything New. So maybe he needs to pick up that book and get on board with, modernizing and streamlining planning and moving our province in a direction that supports businesses and their investment in Manitoba. And ultimately, that's where our jobs spin from in Manitoba. We have a very diverse, very, very diverse number of businesses, and people get jobs there. They pay income tax, and then that's what, I'm not sure if the members understands this, then your income tax goes into paying things like our healthcare and our education and our all our other services. And that's how we've been able to, as a government, to invest more in those three than ever in the history of Manitoba. So this will allow us to even up those investments even more as we move forward. So I just suggest that the member picks up that book, 13 Ways to Kill Your Community. I don't know if he can buy it online and he can read it on his Kobo, but I do suggest he reads it, specifically chapter 10 on Reject Everything New.
Member from Concordia.
Well, I certainly hope that the minister didn't take the same condescending tone with Cam Blight when he reached out and expressed these concerns. Because I certainly would listen to the words of our municipal partners, and you know, if I'm hearing that they have concerns, I think the minister is certainly hearing them as well, and you know, we're going to continue to bring those concerns forward. I just want to note for the minister and the committee, we have 4 minutes left, so I'm going to make this last question very brief. I hope the minister doesn't run out of time, because I understand at 6 we're cut off, so he wouldn't be able to answer this. Very, very straightforward question. There's a group of residents in West St. Paul concerned about the redevelopment of the St. Benedict's monastery site. I know that they've been reaching out, certainly been vocal in the media, been vocal in their own RM. But it does sound like there are some serious concerns, not only about the development, but about some of the irregularities that they believe are happening between West St. Paul and the Red River Planning District, and with regards to the Middle Church Secondary Plan. I just wanted to know, has the minister met with this group? You know, is there any interest from this from the minister to ensure that these irregularities are addressed, and specifically when it comes to any kind of allocation of water rights that have been assigned to certain developers in agreements, that they again have the full scrutiny of his government, so that you know, residents can be assured that any kind of development that's happening is in fact adhering to the Red River Planning District guidelines and those of West St. Paul and the Middle Church Secondary Plan.
Minister of Municipal Relations.
Yeah, I think the member will appreciate that this will, Bill 37 will actually give the opportunity and the voice for the people involved to have an appeal, and I do. I know he has concerns with Red River planning. You know, that's something that his friend at Selkirk has as well, and but we have to recognize that this is all at the grassroots. They're mature and responsible level of government, and Manitoba municipalities and their elected officials have the independence to govern their own internal matters. And there's a bunch of avenues that are available. We are aware of the problem. They have not asked for a meeting.
Order, please. I am interrupting the proceedings of this section of the Committee of Supply pursuant to the sessional order passed by the House on October 7th, 2021. Item 5D states that on Wednesday, October 13th, 2021 at 6 p.m., the chairpersons of the Committee of Supply in each section will interrupt debate and put the questions immediately without debate on any remaining estimate resolutions. The sessional order also indicates that for any requested recorded votes, the division bells shall ring for no more than 1 minute on each question, and the committee and the House shall rise following the consideration of the last resolution. I am therefore going to call in sequence the remaining resolutions for this section in the following Department of Municipal Relations. I would remind members that in accordance with the sessional order, these questions may not be debated. At this point, I will allow all virtual members to unmute their mic so that they can respond to the questions. Resolution 13.1. Be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $4,474,000 for the municipal relations, administration, and finance for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 13.2. Be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $46,917,000 for the municipal relations, community planning, permitting, and development for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolutions pass?
Pass.
Resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 13.3. Be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $11,933,000 for municipal relations, municipal assessment, and advisory services for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 13.4. Be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $312,683,000 for municipal relations, financial assistance for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 13.5. Be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $1,725,000 for municipal relations, capital assets for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 13.6. Be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $85,930,000 for municipal relations, loans and guarantees programs for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. We don't have this one? Did we? Okay. My apologies. So this concludes our consideration of estimates in this section of the Committee of Supply in room 255. Committee, rise.